Hello, everyone, and welcome to our today's session. Very happy that there are so many of you. Welcome to September, and welcome to another interesting month with another interesting webinars provided by Education USA Virtual. Here you have a QR code on this screen that will allow you to go on our website and see all the events that we have planned for September. I promise it's going to be an interesting month. So, guys, I forgot to say, my name is Alina, and I'm an Education USA advisor. And for the next 2 months, for September and October, we are going to introduce you to our Education USA regional advisors, because we have 11 countries in the Education USA virtual initiative. So you will meet each one of them, and they will provide webinars on different topics. They will provide interesting presentations. So subscribe to those events, address your questions in advance, and yes, stay active, join our lives, because that way you can also address your question if you have them. And for September, we specifically focused on the applications of the undergraduate students. And the first advisor that is going to start this series of webinars is going to be my colleague Yulia from Ukraine. Yulia, thank you so much for agreeing to participate in our webinar. I'm more than sure that there are a lot of students from Ukraine that are supporting you, and many more of those who are in other countries, but they will get to know you better. They will get to know how professional our advisors are, and they will get, your advice and your tips on specifically today how to write a college personal statement. So I'm more than sure, guys, you'll find a lot of useful information that will help you to craft your perfect personal statement. And yes, stay tuned. Submit your questions in the chat. First comes up the presentation, and then we're gonna focus to the Q&A session. So Yulia, the floor is yours.
Well, Alina, thank you so much for the introduction. Hello, everyone. Indeed, my name is Yulia, and I am the Education USA Ukraine advisor. I have been an advisor for 6 years now, and today I'm going to will focus my presentation on the insights and the information I got from my experience of being an Education USA advisor, and also from my own experience of applying to the US institutions. Because a few years ago, I did apply for master's programs myself. It was successful. I got accepted to 2 institutions. Unfortunately, for personal reasons, I didn't go. I didn't attend those programs. However, the application process itself was a huge learning experience for me, and definitely helped me get some insights that now I use to advise my students. And today specifically, we will focus on personal statements. That's actually the information that will be useful for undergraduate students and for graduate students as well. Well, depends on the type of the documents, but indeed for graduate and for undergraduate students. First, let's start with the definition. What is that, right? What is a personal statement? So for undergraduate students, you are expected to have one so-called personal statement. For most of you who are doing Common App, there will be a Common App essay or coalition essay, or if you're using the university-specific platform, still, most of the cases, there would be a requirement to submit some sort of a personal statement, either with a prompt or with a general topic. Also, there are supplemental essays, so this webinar will be useful for you. You might use some information from today in the supplementals essay as well. Really depends on the topic. And for those who are applying for graduate programs, you would most likely submit statement of purpose and personal statement. So I'm going to briefly talk about the difference between these two. So today we're not going to talk about statement of purpose. That is a different document. However, if you're required to submit a personal statement, welcome to this presentation. This information will be useful for you. Also, for statement of purpose, some information that I'm going to mention can also be used, like the structure, for example. And motivation letters, to be honest, I haven't seen many institutions lately asking for motivation letters. Motivation letter is basically when it's addressed to someone. In most of the cases, this is a statement. So you don't address your statement. You just tell your story. So we're not going to touch well, we're not going to touch upon much the topic of motivation letters. We're going to focus on Common App essay, supplemental essay, personal statement. And as I promised, for those graduate students who are watching us, what is the difference between the statement of purpose and personal statement? So, personal statement, this is actually when the university wants to know you as a person. You focus on who you are as a person. This is to basically see if you fit the community, if your values, if your personality characteristics fit the community. And the admissions office expects you to talk about your personal background, your experiences, your values, and it is a little bit less formal, we can say so. When it comes to statement of purpose, that is the document that is most required from the graduate students, the ones who are applying for master's or PhD. And the focus of this document is basically to tell what you want to study and why. You focus on your academic and professional background, and you explain how your academic and professional background has led you to this program and how well this program will benefit you and help you get what you want in life professionally and academically. So it's a bit more formal, more structured. And again, you focus on your academic and professional goals and experiences. And the goal of this document is to show the admissions committee that you are academically prepared, that you have clear goals, that you know what you want to study, and that your goals align with the program. So today we're focusing on personal statement. And to reiterate, the personal statement, this is the document that would reflect who you are as a person. We talk about your background, values, motivation. It shows you beyond the academics, and it's more of reflective tone of writing, not narrative. A little bit of narrative could be, but mostly it's reflective. So you reflect on how your experiences have formed you. Let us stop a bit and look for at this specific slide. When we say the application process and admissions to the U.S. is holistic, this is to illustrate the notion of holistic, right? This is when every piece of your application has the same value. So when we look at your grades and when we look at your test scores, we can assume that from these two, the admissions committee learns how good of a student you are. They can assume that you have good study skills, that you've spent last 4 years of your high school or university while studying, dedicating your time into learning, and you're hardworking, you're disciplined. This is what they can assume from these two from these two pieces. From your recommendation letters, they can also learn that you're a good student, and it really depends on who you have chosen as a recommender, but eventually they learn about how other people perceive you, right? Either as a student, as a professional, as a participant of a debate club, a sportsman, sportswoman, etc. And when we look at these two, this is eventually when they get to know you more as a person. And when we specifically look at the activities and achievements list, this is connected to the essay. It will make sense how. So basically, a lot of you had a question like, how do I choose a story, right? How do I choose a story or experience that I will demonstrate, that I talk about in my essay? So this is how: make a list of your activities and your achievements and label them of like how you think this activity will what side of you this activity will show. For example, if you're doing a debate club, probably public speaking skills, right? If you're a leader of a team, probably leadership skills. And after making this list, think, okay, so in my essay, is there experience or some sort of characteristic that I want to build on? So not to repeat, be careful here. In your essay, do not repeat anything from this list. Do not repeat that you're a good student because they already see that. Do not retell what's already reflected in the activities list. So think if there's anything that you can build on from the activities list, or if there's anything that hasn't been mentioned anywhere here and you'd like to mention. So basically think how you'd like to be perceived by the admissions office. And it's important that it has to be a true story, right? You're always honest in your application. So, and also, I remember that one of you or some of you asked the question in the form when registering, is it worth talking about traumatic experience or bad experience? And I love this question because it really opens the floor for a conversation. Personally, I believe that the essay is not as much about what as well as so what. So you briefly state a story, right? You briefly tell your situation, tell your story. And then most of your essay, it has to be your own reflection on how the situation will made you feel, made you think, what learning outcomes you've gotten from the situation, and how you're going to apply these in the future. So if you had a negative experience, and if this experience is really important to who you are today, if you have reflected on this experience and there are some learning outcomes, so it it really can be a good essay if you outline it well, right? If you focus not as much on what, but when you reflect, when you tell so what. So this happened. So what? How has it affected me? So eventually, any kind of situation can be put it can be put in a core of your essay. And also, you had questions like as to what if I don't have a lot of experience. Really, don't worry about that, because especially if you're an undergraduate applicant, you are not expected to have to have won the Olympics. If you have, this is great, but you can talk about very mundane experiences. It really depends on what you learn from these experiences. If, let's say, you decided that you want to be to be healthy, you want to eat healthy and run every morning in the park, and you have to wake up at 5 o'clock every day, and you've been doing it for like 6 months, that could be an idea for your essay. Yes, it's something routine, but at the same time, you can talk about how disciplined you are, right? You can talk that at first it was difficult, but then you woke up every day with a thought that, okay, my goal is to be healthy, is to stay fit, thus I'm gonna, wake up and run. And thus you learned how to be disciplined, and now you're going to apply it to different spheres of your life. So that is not a global example, but that is, a good learning outcome. So really focus on what you've learned in your personal statements. All right, so I believe that key components of every good essay, actually doesn't matter which type, personal statement, even statement of purpose, is structure, message, and a story. And we're going to look at each of them separately. So when we talk about the structure, personally, I am a fan of thesis-based structure. It's used widely in the academic setting to write research papers often, or to write argumentative essays. For personal statements, it can also be used successfully, and I believe this is the way to keep your essay coherent and will actually keep the story clear. So how this structure looks like. First of all, there's a thesis statement. So this is usually the very first sentence. Oh, well, not the very first sentence. It is a sentence in the very first paragraph. It can be the first sentence, it can be the last sentence. I usually use it as the last sentence of the first paragraph. So thesis statement, that is the sentence, a statement that introduces the idea of your essay. It basically shows the reader, this is what I'm going to talk about. And it's important that every next paragraph and every first sentence of the next every paragraph supports that thesis statement. So basically, you focus on one thing throughout the entire essay. Of course, your essay can include different experiences, different examples, but it's just important that it's united by one message. And thesis statement helps to do that. For example, when I applied to graduate programs, my major was adult education. Believe it or not, there's such a major. There was a few master's programs that I applied to, and in my let's say, okay, in my thesis statement, let me start with a thesis statement. In my thesis statement, I basically said something like, I want to be a learning and development specialist, and I understand my learning gaps, and your program would provide me with all the necessary tools for me to become a successful professional. So basically, in different words, of course. I would word it differently, but that would be my thesis statement, which means that all the other parts of my essay would build on that topic. I will talk, about my less so-called learning gaps and how the program can help me, bridge those gaps and how I can use them, and eventually how with this program I can become a successful learning and development professional. So the thesis statement basically provides the tone of your essay. This is what you're going to talk about. And then every next paragraph, you can have as many as you wish. Usually it's 2, 3, but again, it really depends on the flow of your essay. I wouldn't provide you with the specific number of paragraphs. So every paragraph starts with a topic sentence. And a topic sentence, that's the first sentence of the paragraph. And it has to be connected to the thesis, which means it just has to be within one theme. And it introduces the idea of each paragraph, which means that every next sentence of the paragraph builds on the topic sentence. So let me show you the example. I believe that will help you understand it better. Let's imagine that I am an undergraduate student, and I'd like to tell a story about my passion for journalism. I'd like to tell a story that at first I was shy to try new hobbies, but then something happened, and I was invited to a new experience. I was invited to a competition, writing competition, and after that, I realized that I have passion for writing. And by trying new things, by being open to new experiences, I became passionate for journalism. So my thesis statement for this story would be something like, being open-minded has pushed me beyond my comfort zone, allowing me to explore new opportunities and discover my passion for journalism. That would be my thesis statement. Then we're expected to have topic sentences, right? Every paragraph has a topic sentence. As for me, the good topic sentence for this one would be, even though my first experience writing was for a competition I didn't win, I found a hobby that has defined who I am today. So basically, in this essay, I will talk about this experience. I will maybe mention that I was shy in the beginning, but then I tried it and I learned that I'm actually good at writing. I spent more hours writing, and that basically led me to realizing that that's something I want to do in my life or something like that. And as you can see, this sentence, topic sentence, is somewhat related to thesis, right? It builds on thesis. It kind of like develops the plot. As an example, the second topic sentence would be something like, volunteering as a school newspaper editor introduced me to the joy of sharing the stories of others. Again, it's connected, it builds on the thesis statement. And well, as you can see in this paragraph, I would probably will talk about this experience, right? I would describe how I became a school newspaper volunteer and what I learned from it. Again, remember, it's not as much as about what as it is about so what you learn from it. And as an example, the third one would be something like, giving a voice to those who are unheard has become my passion, right? It doesn't give out too much, but at the same time, this paragraph would probably be discussing how the student has volunteered for maybe, or has interviewed some underrepresented groups, or has volunteered in the shelter, has had some journalism project, and how they will apply this knowledge in the future, or want to apply this experience in the future. So basically, that is a demonstration of the thesis-based structure. So there's thesis, and then every topic sentence builds on this thesis, and eventually the content of every paragraph builds on the topic sentence. This way you can keep your essay coherent. And also, there's kind of like a technique to check if your essay is coherent and if it makes sense. So basically, that would be like to take out the thesis statement, every topic sentence, put them together and read it. If it makes sense, if it's clear, if it's something that you wanted to say, if your essay can exist just with a sentences, topic sentences, thesis statement, it means that's a good structure. So I'm going to reiterate it quickly again. So you start with the introduction. Usually there's a hook and thesis statement, then the body of paragraphs and conclusion. Actually, speaking of conclusion, personally, I like to include conclusion in every essay I write. I know some people will have successfully submitted essays, personal statements without conclusions. It's up to you. If it comes to personal statement, it works differently for statement of purpose. But eventually, remember that conclusion does not anything new, right? In conclusion, you sum up. Sometimes it's even a good idea when you start with a hook, basically come back to your hook in the conclusion. All right, so we discussed structure. Let's talk about the story. A lot of you have heard the word hook. If you haven't, so basically, that is the statement or the anecdote, a personal story. That's basically a tool, right, that you use to sort of catch the attention of the reader. But, uh, well, catching attention of the reader, of course, that is important. As for me, though, the most difficult part is maintaining the attention of the reader. Because even though you start with a strong hook, you still can lose the reader on the second, third paragraph. And in order to maintain the attention of the reader throughout the entire essay, it is really important that you keep your essay smooth and the flow of your sentences smooth. So that's why I'd like to come back to the structure and highlight that hook is important. The structure is equally important because this is how you keep the attention of the reader. So just an example. Let's look at this one. That's the hook that I thought that would make sense for the example that I showed to you. But again, with a hook, you can get creative as you can, but also read the prompt of your essay because depending on it, you might need the different hook or might not be allowed. Well, some creative tools. All right. So when it comes to the story, also I would like to encourage you that it is important to make sure that each sentence moves the plot. So each sentence brings something new and valuable to your essay. If it doesn't, it either should be paraphrased, smashed together with the other sentence, or well, it shouldn't be there. Sorry. Sometimes it happens. Some sentences are better modified. So make sure that each sentence brings something new. Each sentence moves the plot. Just an example of this, the topic sentence that I showed. Even though my first experience writing was a competition I didn't win, I found a hobby that has defined who I am today. My teacher invited me to take part in a writing competition. It was my first competition ever. I was scared at first, but I realized that only giving a chance to new experiences will help me understand what I'm good at. Well, let's see. So my teacher invited me to take part in this competition. Well, it might be a good sentence, but again, this essay is about you, not about your teacher. Unless there's a story on how this teacher had impact on you, this sentence might be a bit redundant. Also, it was my first competition ever. Well, we already know that, right? In the very first sentence, you said my first experience writing. So from that piece, we can get that it was your first experience ever. And the last one, but it's actually for me, that's the first thing I look for when I review essays is redundancy. So if you can say something with one word, say it with one word. So for example, if you can say exhausted, there's no reason to say very tired, right? So basically, you don't have to say come up with if you can say produce, for example, if it's right for the context. So redundancy in terms of words, like wordiness, but also there is redundancy as I've shown. So basically, when the sentences repeat the same idea all over again, it's really important that each sentence has to bring something new. All right, so that's an example for you. So when we look, she returned back to the office again. That sounds wrong, right? Because eventually, return it already means she came back. So it's just wiser to say she returned to the office without all of these wordiness. So just keep it in mind when you review your essay. This is something I focus on when I review the student's essay. So and as to the message. So first of all, we already discussed how you can choose the experience that you focus on. And at the same time, it's important what you want your reader to understand. That's how you choose your message, basically. You try to understand how you want to be perceived by the admissions. There are some mistakes that I find often, and of course, I made them myself, still make them. So I suggest to look at them together. So the first one is focusing on multiple learning outcomes. As I said, your essay is essentially a lot about the learning outcome. It's important one essay, one message, and every paragraph builds on it. The second one is actually generalization. So be specific in your examples. Don't get too specific in terms of don't narrate like 90% of your essay. The reflection matters. At the same time, really be specific. Don't say, I'm passionate and empathetic. uh, well, that's the conclusion that you make for the reader, right? Let me, as a reader, make a conclusion for myself based on the story you've described. So essentially, don't just tell, show. In this case, if you want me to understand that you're empathetic and passionate, you could tell a story how you were put in a situation where you had to become a leader in your team, even though that wasn't the official leadership position, and there were teammates that were struggling, so you supported those teammates. And even though they couldn't learn something, they struggled learning something, maybe you took extra time to learn it yourself and teach your teammates. In this case, I could be like, oh, this person, first of all, great leadership skills, and secondly, very empathetic, good team member, and well, probably patient because they learned something themselves and then showed to their teammates. So show, demonstrate with your examples. And the last one that I wanted to focus on, the mistake that we're going to correct now, right? Confusing the topic with a message. So these are two different things. Topic is like something that you are going to to deliver your message through. For example, topic could be my summer volunteering experience, right? Throughout the entire essay, you will be talking about, well, your summer volunteering experience. Well, the message here could be helping others. Helping others taught me how to be patient and empathetic. Again, patient and empathetic. So basically, the message that you want me to receive is that, well, by helping others, you became patient and empathetic. So in this case, your summer volunteering experience is basically the tool. That's the storyline that you choose to deliver this message to me as a reader. I hope that makes sense. All right. And the last advice that I would give to you, and this is very important, so I'm going to underscore this, or review as many times as you can. It's really important that you start writing your essay as early as possible, because again, writing is eventually editing, right? You put together the first draft and then you review it. Ask your teachers, ask your colleagues, ask your peers to review your essay and be open to the feedback. At the same time, remember it's your idea, so you don't have to accept all the feedback. And as or after you have reviewed it many times, after you received some feedback, or meanwhile, you can also submit your essay to your Education USA advisor. For example, every Education USA center is different. For example, here in Kyiv, we gladly read the students' essays. I believe many centers do, and we have many advisors with various experiences. So this kind of review would also be useful, among others, because again, get as much feedback as you can. So that actually would be all of the advice I wanted to give to you today. I can see that the chat is lively, so I assume there might be questions. So I'm going to pass it back to Alina for further Q&A part.
Thank you, Yulia, so much for your presentation. I really love the tips, and I really love that you corrected so many mistakes that the students might do when writing their essay. Okay, so yes, of course, we have a bunch of questions from the students that had given them in advance, and many of them are similar, even though they are paraphrased differently. But mainly, the idea of a lot of the questions that we have received is about how to avoid cliches, or what it should be that moment in my life that I should list in my essay, or how do I choose that moment or that challenge, and how do I describe it correctly in that essay. So maybe we can discuss that in just and give that a one I don't know, a 2-3 minutes answer. So we'll not stop on all the questions that are similar. So an example of that
Yeah.
question that I mean. How should I choose specific moments from my life to write about? If I, for example, have gone through many though challenges in life, which one should I pick to write about?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, thank you for this question. Actually, let me, virtually come back to the slide. Remember that slide when we had different parts of the application, like your grades, your essay, your activities. So I would encourage you to basically think how how you think the admissions already sees you. So basically, what you have already shown through your activities, what they have already or might have already learned from your recommenders, and after you make the list of all the characteristics or all the values that you have already reflected in your application, try to think, or either you can build on something. So for example, if you really want to come out as a leader, you want to come across as a strong leader, and you want to demonstrate that you are a team player. So maybe you already have activities showing that, but maybe you can focus on your essay. You can focus on a story in your essay that would also sort of strengthen that characteristic of yours. And you can think of a situation at work or at school where you have demonstrated those skills that you want the admissions to see. Or the other way would be actually thinking of what isn't said yet. Yes, what you haven't told yet in your application, and maybe you really want the admissions to know, and think how you can demonstrate that. As I said before, it doesn't have to be a very global story. It can be something very routine. It's really about how you put it into words. And I saw the question about cliches. Well, honestly, I haven't really seen a cliche essay if it's actually written by a student. I don't know if we're going to talk about AI, but the cliche essays usually the ones that are written with heavy AI editing. So it's if it's your story, if you have your hook, if you tell your situation with your writing skills, usually it's not cliche. Even if everybody chooses the same topic, the story is usually very unique.
That I wanted to say the same thing, because a bunch of questions about how to avoid cliches. It doesn't mean that if you had, I don't know, if your activity, extracurricular activity, is about sport or about, I don't know, an Olympiad in mathematics or physics, and someone else has the same story, it's going to be the same content. So you will write it differently for sure if you're not using AI, I guess. So yeah, I totally agree here with Yulia. Okay, so I already said that today, guys, we're going to focus on personal statements. We have here a question from someone, I suppose, that wants to apply for their postgraduate degree. And we will have webinars in October for postgraduate students. So please stay tuned on those. We're going to answer those questions specifically there. We're going to trying to focus and to answer questions related to the topics always. Good. So the next question is also, as I say, it's very similar as how to brainstorm the topics and how to choose the topics, which you already answered. Then, how personal essay is graded? What is a criteria for a good personal statement?
Well, as you can imagine, only the admissions officers might know the criteria that they have internally for the essay. For me, I already shared my criteria as advisor. I focus on good structure. Well, whether the structure is good, I check for structure. I check for the message, whether it's clear, whether it's coherent. That's a big one. And whether the story, there's one storyline, and whether the flow is, whether it's easy to read eventually. So I think that criteria, that would be a good questions to the admissions officer. But at the same time, I'd say that something that I would probably have said is whether it makes sense. Just make sure it makes sense, it's readable. And especially for graduate students, because graduate students are sort of focusing more on academics and on professional achievements, sometimes it's hard to go in depth into very formal language and lose the focus that it's a personal statement. So it's still about you. Maybe you're not talking about your childhood experiences, right? But it's still about your story. So make sure it's easy to read, even though you might be focusing on something very serious.
Thank you. The next question, and we have similar of those. Does it have to be unusually crazy successful story?
Oh no, no, definitely no. As I said, you might have won an Olympics. Talk about it, but if not, you don't. You're not expected again, especially if you're an undergraduate student. For graduate students as well, you have your professional academic experiences to talk about. It doesn't have to be something over the top. Some programs might ask you, for the specific number of years in the profession, so that's different. But if you're an undergraduate applicant, they know that you are 16, 17, 18 years old. So basically, it really, again, coming back to so what? It's really about how you have reflected on that story. And it might be something very basic, like something you can find in your everyday, as long as there's a good learning outcome.
I agree. Thank you. The next question: can we practice and check essays without teacher? Any websites or AIs?
Mm. Oh, wow. So I'm let's put it this way. You can research this topic. Maybe you can even ask AI. I'm just going to share my perspective as advisor and something that I use. I often use Grammarly, and I've talked to the academic writing instructor. He says, for example, in the U.S. context, specifically, his university is totally fine. But it's really important that you don't let tools like Grammarly overwrite your essay. So you check for grammar, but you correct the grammar yourself. And sometimes Grammarly might, have this, attempts, make those attempts to rewrite everything, even though you don't mean it this way. So it's okay to like change, a word from, a vocab, or look up some grammatical structure, but it still has to be your story. It has to be written by you. And I think the question is, can you practice and check essays without the teacher? Well, of course you can, and even before AI, you could do that. But feedback is really valuable. So still, it's your story. It's a human story, and sometimes AI tools really lack that human perspective. So I would definitely encourage you to actually ask a few people to read your essay, or at least one person, or at least an advisor, so that you get a human perspective and see at least whether the story was perceived the way you wanted it to be perceived. Because grammar, I think, yes, you can check. Again, be careful not rewriting everything. But the story itself, I think you'd need a human for that. At least I would recommend that.
Yes, and don't forget about the fact, guys, that everything now is also checked. So they
Yeah.
also have this anti-plagiarism system, also done by AI. So that can be tricky. So now you will be detected in case if you are using too much AI. But that also can be
Yeah.
viewed. Yulia already explained that this should be also related to your previous, experience, extracurricular activities, and everything should be connected. Good. The next question: how to show university that I find their program unique and that I did my research without sounding cliche? I suppose this is someone that is doing applying for their postgraduate or something, or maybe that is an undergraduate student. I'm just not sure in where they want to list this fact that they are interested
Hmm.
to
Yeah.
apply to this program.
I think this might be about the statement of purpose, and as you said, because there's somebody
Yeah.
also asking for the similar webinar for graduate degree. So I think you already mentioned that there will be one.
Yes, sure. The next question, which is also a good one: is it okay to write about complexes and overcoming them? I think that's a
Yes.
good topic.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
So it really coming back to what and so what. It can be any type of story, but again, think how you what you've learned from this story. So if we simplify the question or completely transition, this question to a different one, like should the essay have the negative vibe? Probably not. So still after reading your essay, the reader should be like, oh, okay, so this person learned this, even after this kind of situation, still this person managed to do this and that. So it can be a traumatic experience, unfortunately, right? In the core of your essay, like the situation that you're describing, but still you have to reflect on it and, not only narrate, but also show what you learned from it. It always comes down to that. Sorry, I talk a lot about that, but eventually that's what the personal statement is about.
Yes, yes. We always tell our students that it shows how resistant you were through those times, to those rough times for you,
Yeah.
and I think that's always a good idea. I mean, even though the experience wasn't good, and also maybe sharing some events that happened in your life or in your childhood that
Yeah.
still affected you or gave you some, yes, some cause effect things. Yes, it's good
Yeah.
to write. Good. Then one more question from the students that gave the questions in advance, and then we'll focus on those that are in the chat. How to write the second part of the essay after their realization to make it go from -10 to +10 without focusing too much on achievements and extracurriculars, but your identity.
Mm-hmm. The second part of your essay. Oh, okay. So the learning point. After you have described what happened,
Mm-hmm.
and then you reflect on it, how to make it go from -10. So I'm a bit confused with the part to have it go from -10 to +10. But essentially, how I understand this question is basically how to, put together the second part where you talk about your learning outcomes without focusing too much on achievements. Okay. Well, essentially, the first part, if you will, that will be your achievements and extracurriculars, right? Well, again, don't copy paste your achievements, extracurriculars. Make sure it doesn't repeat. But essentially, if you want to talk about the achievements, that would be the part when you narrate, where you like, I won the competition. This was so and so competition. Here's what I've learned. That's the second part you're talking about, right? So here you reflect. So you think how you felt, right? At first, I felt shy, but then I realized that, it was a long time preparing for this competition, and I had to be disciplined. And I was surprised how disciplined I was. And I realized that this kind of discipline can be applied to different parts of my life. So this is when you actually talk, well, what you've learned, how you felt, what kind of new, maybe, features of character you discovered about you, and how you will apply this. So I would say it's really hard to be focusing on achievements and extracurriculars in the second part. The first one, yes, again, don't like copy paste your extracurricular list. Choose one story. But the second one is purely mostly reflection, I'd say. What do you think, Alina?
I also think that this is like a conclusion of all the actions that have been taken place in the
Yeah.
first part. So, given a good reflective moment in the second part, that's actually also that kind of not hook, but actually the thing that determine how good your personal
Yeah.
statement is, and what have you learned. So doing it like very very good. I think it's the most important part, and here actually where the help of Education
Yeah.
USA advisor comes. I will wrap up the questions from those who addressed them in advance with one more, actually two more, those short ones. Should we write separate essays for each universities? And that's
Yes.
important just to stop here.
Yes, well, you
Yes.
should, right? And actually, there's a thing such as self-plagiarism. So make sure you're not plagiarizing yourself. This is when you take the essay that you used for some kind of other program and use it for a different one. So I think it's okay to have some maybe points that you're going to mention in every essay. It's okay to have similar structure. Maybe there's a hook that you love and you like to use the different versions of this hook, but eventually these have to be different essays. I believe so. Yeah.
Thank you. Should I emphasize my achievements more or desire?
Uh-huh. Desire, like motivation, I assume.
I also assume that because I was thinking about it. Maybe not motivation, but maybe some achievements that the person wants, achievements that the person wants to get in the future. I suppose. I don't know.
Okay.
To me, it's similar to achievements, kind
Mm-hmm.
of.
Well, if we look at at this question from perspective like what has already been achieved and what I plan to be achieved, so I'd say that, reflecting means that something has already happened. At the same time, I think that you can be successful stating your goals for the future as well. So it really depends what you want the admissions to learn about you. And again, stating your goals, it's very, graduate student specific, I'd say, in this case, because as a graduate student you talk what you want to learn and how you're planning to apply. But usually for me, I'd rather make sure there's something from the past, like the situation that you reflected on, connected to the future. So basically there's a flow from a learning outcome to how it's going to be used, or how or what you plan to achieve.
Yes, or what you want to
Yeah.
change, considering the experience that you had in the past. How will you improve that thing
Yeah.
or something? Okay, now the questions in the chat. We have selected some of them which are not, similar to those that we had in advance. What if I want to pursue masters in completely different field program for my bachelor degree? What's the right approach to write a personal statement in this case? So this is for masters. I already said that we'll have a bunch of webinars in October specifically for masters. And today we're trying to allow time to those who are applying for their undergraduate degree. So guys, please don't blame us for that. But yes, we'll allow your time then in October answering that. But it shouldn't be a problem. We just want to say it shortly, but that there is no problem if you're applying for a different field than the one that you had for your bachelor degree. So just shortly. By then, you can also ask for the help of an EducationUSA advisor. So just promoting our services
Yeah.
here. Good. The next thing, hey there from Turkmenistan, how can I write my personal statement if I didn't participate in extracurricular activities or any volunteering?
Mhm. Of course. Well, let me highlight that I believe you still have time to build your resume, even though it's just a few months, or if you're applying next year, it's a whole year. So extracurricular activities and volunteering is important. Well, not volunteering, extra, like doing something besides school. Eventually, it is important for your application process. It really strengthens your application. But if you don't have those experiences yet, you still can think of the situations maybe you had in high school. Maybe there's a school project within a class that you did, and you'd like to, well, describe the situation and reflect on that experience. Maybe you really like how you felt during the project, and you feel like this demonstrates some certain features, some characteristics of you that you want the admissions to know about. Or maybe you had a family trip, and you solved the problem or something like that. So it doesn't, in the essay specifically, it doesn't have to be the example of extracurricular activity or achievement. It has to be your story. There is a separate section for that.
Great, thank you. The next question from Margarita. Thank you for your awesome presentation. May I suggest, give an example, how can I put a recommendation letter in my essay? May you suggest? Oh my God, sorry, I misunderstood that. May you suggest, give an example, how can I put a recommendation letter in my essay? I'm just wondering why you want to put a recommendation letter, because this is actually that trick that Yulia specified in the presentation. You don't really need to write about the teacher itself. You need to write about yourself and about your experience as a whole. So yes, maybe if you can give us more details, or if you can refer to your EducationUSA advisor so they can give you accurate assistance on this thing. Maybe you misunderstood how to do that. What do you want? Maybe you want to say something here, Yulia.
Yeah, if Margarita could put a clarification in the chat box, because you don't really, put a recommendation letter in your essay, right? The recommenders submit your
Yes.
recommendations for graduate and for undergraduate. So your essay is your own story.
Great. And there was one more question from Margarita. And also, what would you suggest to practice writing?
Like resources, tools, you mean?
I suppose, yes, resources tool, or how to have a good academic writing or something. Start earlier. That's my first.
Of course. And well, I believe that we have good webinars. I believe that in the past, we had representatives of the US universities and generally advisors sharing their experiences. And actually, probably, like, for example, there's our regional webinars. At the same time, I believe your center might have some resources. So there resources available virtually. At the same time, you said practice, so I assume you want to write. Um, Personally, I believe that well, writing and receiving feedback is the best tool. At the same time, for example, what worked for me when I prepared for TOEFL, there's also the part where you write. I would time myself. I would give myself like, I don't know, I don't remember, like 20, 30 minutes. There's a timer. And I would just write on the specific topic and then read my essay, and I would find the mistakes, misspell, the story would be off. So also self-practicing, like, writing and reading your writing, or even using those AI tools if it's not an essay submitted to the university, right? If it's just practice. And your advisor, your peers, again, receiving feedback, rewriting, receiving feedback, rewriting. As for me, this is the most effective tool.
Thank you. The next question, are personal statements usually very formal, or can they be written in a more casual language?
Yeah, I really believe it really depends on what you mean more casual language. Because when it comes to the statement of purpose for graduate students, that's a separate topic, but still is more academic writing. It is more structured, more formal. When it comes to personal statement, again, from what I've noticed, for graduate students, personal statement, it is a bit more formal, but it's not as formal as statement of purpose. Whereas for undergraduate student, it really depends on the university, the requirements, the prompt. But when we look at Common App essay, so it is less formal, but still not casual language. So maybe Alida, you have a better way to put it, but for me, well, it's a formal writing, right? It's still a formal writing. It's just that it's not a research paper, right? It's not academic writing as it is yet. So you have space to be creative, have a creative hook, tell your story, but it still have to be written well. You still, shouldn't use too many, or shouldn't use any like contractions like
Yes.
I am, not I am, right? So yeah, what do you think?
I totally agree on that. And I have a bunch of examples of students who are using it, like an easy language, some
Yeah.
jargons or something like that. And this doesn't sound really professional in an essay. I wouldn't say, I totally agree that in a graduate a personal statement or a statement of purpose, you would need to use these academic writing and academic, language. Here it doesn't mean that you don't have to use that, but somehow you are much younger, you have a different experience. It's allowed to have some not words, but I don't know, some situations which explain why you are so young, but and you don't have so much experience, for example. But yes, I would say a, a moderate
Yeah.
formal language, not a casual one, for sure. Okay, good. The next question, I also love this one. What we should be more, leader or team member?
Oh, okay. Well, it really depends on who you are, right? It's not who you should be, because even if you look at your institutions, it's not about making your profile match the institution. It's about choosing the institution that, well, you have a good match with. So if you are, whether you are a leader or whether you are a team leader, you should look for institutions that value whatever you are, and well, focused on how you feel. Like if you think you're a good team member, and your institutions also value that, or at least, again, don't emphasize something different, don't emphasize something different, you can be yourself in your essay. Always be yourself in your essay. Actually, choose the right institutions that match your characteristics well, and be yourself in the essay.
Thank you. Then we have a question from Education Counseling. Are there any good samples of essays available, or there is no standard personal statement essay which we should use as a standard to follow? No standard.
Well, actually, I think it comes back to the webinars that you mentioned, I believe, because I believe in later webinars for graduate students. Oh, actually, sorry, personal statement, no statement of purpose.
Personal statement, not statement of
Okay,
purpose. Yeah.
so the standard. So first of all, check the requirements of the school, because the school might have the standard. So sometimes, especially for graduate students, because for undergraduate students, again, it might be Common App, which, well, has a list of topics.
Yeah.
For graduate students, sometimes they might be like, this font, like Times New Roman, like 14, bold or not bold, whatever. So basically, they might even like be very specific how your document should look like, because the application portals are different, and they might have a prompt. So they're not always like write a personal statement. They will give you a prompt and tell you what to focus on.
Yeah.
So look for those. If there are any requirements, if there are no requirements, so coming back to Common App essay, well, eventually you have your word limits, like the word count, you have the list of topics, you are even allowed to choose your own. So there's a lot of flexibility. In this case, there's no standard, but common sense, something we talked about, like the language, formal, formal enough, right? Not too casual. At the same time, structure has to make sense. At the same time, reflective, not narrative that much. So, yes, as Alina said, really, if there's no requirement from the institution, um, no standard, but following those rules that we talked about and that you would be able to find, on the Common App or on other resources.
Yes, for graduate degree, I also
Yeah.
agree that there might be also a
Yeah.
standard and you should follow
Yeah.
terms. Though I see that a lot of universities which are accepting the postgraduate students, they are kind of sticking more to their portfolio, to their CV, and to their resume. So there is a lot of more focus on that. But yes, for those who are asking that, I totally agree that there is a standard that should be followed. For undergrad, it's kind of much easier, I guess. Not saying the Common App, and we had a webinar on Common App, guys. So you can go on our channel and watch that video. There are also a lot of tips on how to write your personal statement in Common App. And there was one more thing from education counseling. It would be also useful to have a webinar for those wishing to apply for graduate degree. So I'm saying it once more that in October we'll have webinars for graduate degree students. So yeah, you will find out there all the information you need. Prepare your questions. No worries. Then one more question from, not question, but I get I think a praise. Thank you for such a great opportunity and shared your experience with us. Thank you so much. I really loved also not a question, but also I think an affirmation or something like that from Anna. She wrote that all the questions almost that we have answered were from her, and I was very happy to find out that we are answering their question. And she was asking if the help is free. So yes, the help is free from us. Use this opportunity, guys, because you will not get it so often, I guess. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending. Thank you so much, Yulia.
Thank you.
You are as always are such a good. I wanted to say host, but invitee is better, or speaker, I think is better to say here. We really appreciate your experience and really appreciate the students who have been with us today. Guys, stay tuned for all the future events that we have planned for September. Next webinar is going to be run by me, and it's going to be next Monday. So if you have more questions about how to understand the admission process for studies in the US, specifically for undergraduate students, submit your question, register for that event, and there we can chat more and answer your question. And yes, use the services of Education USA Ukraine. You already can see how good are our advisors. And yeah, Yulia, thank you once more. Thank you once more, everyone who watched us today, and for your interest. You have a great evening, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.